Life changes, time changes, people change, tax code change, heck, everything changes. So many times we forget that our investments need to change along with all of those other changes that are taking place either in our life or in the tax code. We're going to talk about that on Consider This program today. Changes that you should consider. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Jamie Burton.
Jamie is one of our senior advisors in the Lafayette office, the Financial Enhancement Group, a Purdue grad, degree in financial planning. Happy to have you along, Jamie. We are talking about things that should change in your life as other things change. So you wrote an article, Too Many Chefs in the Kitchen. You can find that at our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. Happy to get it to you there. Tell me what you were talking about, Too Many Chefs in the Kitchen.
Yeah, so a lot of times what we see when we have new families come in that have not worked with us before is that one of their objectives that they bring to us is that they don't want to have all of their eggs in one basket. And when they say that, what they mean is that to them, it makes sense to not have all of their investments in one place with one advisor because that's just not being diversified. They think that it makes more sense to have multiple advisors who are managing their funds in different ways, and that helps them be more diversified. What we know is that that could lead to a lot of trouble because as a fiduciary advisor, the things that we're looking at, whether it be the 5 critical elements of your life after work, tax planning, the investment playbook, risk management, and then your legacy planning, and also the fiduciary focus of risk and volatility and fees and expenses when we're looking at your taxes, not just today, but also for the future and for real return, we can't do the proper planning that we need to do in all of those areas if we don't have the full picture of what's going on for our families. So a lot of times with investing, how we think of it is through farming. So we know that there are silos on a farm. So you put your corn in one, your beans in one. You know, when you have a farm operation, you can't just make decisions based on one silo or one farm that you have. You have to make the best decisions based on the whole of that farm. The same thing is true with investing. You can't just make decisions based on one small portion of what you see going on. You have to be able to look at the full picture so you can make the decisions best on how to invest, the tax planning, where should we be pulling money from, and how investments should be situated for your plan going forward.
Well done. So let's go back to the farm because here's what usually happens to people in life, right? It's, in the old days when I lived in Muncie, up until I was 16, the farm operations would have, 200 acres, 20 chickens, 5 cows, and a pig or two, right?
Yep.
And then I moved to Benton County where, up by my Lafayette office and where I graduated from high school, and there are people with 6, 8, 10,000 acres that they're farming. They have no chickens, but they had a lot of decisions they had to make about farming,
Yep.
right? Well, so you've got to think about this when you're starting out. You're a younger person, and this whole thing's about midlife planning today. But you're a younger person, you're starting out, you're probably single, you're getting your first job, and all of a sudden you have this 401k thingy or a 403b if you're one of our teachers, right, or nurses, and you're putting money into it, right? It's in one plan in one place, and there's maybe 10 investment options inside of there that you've got to choose from, right? And maybe you figure that out and maybe you don't, but all of a sudden you meet your beau, right? And you get married, and he or she has a 401k or a 403b, and now we have 2 little silos that are working, right? Our operation is bigger. One of the mistakes people rarely think about, in my opinion, is inside of a 401k, believe it or not, there are better asset classes than others, right? Or better ways. The federal government, the TSP program, for instance, is a great example of really has some options that are in there that I can't get you anywhere else, right? So you just have to be aware of those kind of things. But why wouldn't I want to put the best options in my 401k and the best options in Barb's 401k, right? Mm-hmm. If we were at 2 different companies as opposed to trying to diversify each of the individual operations, right? Then Suddenly you make a little bit more money, and here comes the IRAs or the Roth IRAs or the 529 plan. and suddenly you got silos sprouted up all over the place with no collective person managing them.
Yeah, and then also what we see is that some people come in and they haven't had an advisor before and they have just decided to do the investing on their own. And what's in their minds that they're doing to diversify their investments is to just purchase different mutual funds. Typically, if somebody has one mutual fund, they have up to 7 mutual funds. So they think that if they buy these different mutual funds and they have those in their investments, that they are being properly diversified. What we know about mutual funds is that when you really break it down and you look into each different mutual funds, a lot of the time their top holdings are all very similar. So if you have the top holdings similar in all these mutual funds, you're really not as diversified as you think you are, and you're putting yourself in at a lot more risk than what you are probably prepared to be taking at that time.
So if you think about this, I'm going to try to take it back to the farm operation to a degree, right? So my guys in Benton County will meet at the coffee shop on Saturday morning and lie to each other. But they love each other, but they're all very, very competitive. Most of them are related. And that's what happens. And don't think in the money management business that we don't all know what each other's thinking and going on. When I get into the industry in '87, access to data was limited. Today, access to data is as plentiful as you can imagine. There's a shortage of is wisdom. And so how do you apply the fertilizer or the chemicals or how it is you're going to do what you want to do? And what happens, and we saw it happen in 18, go back and look at your account in September and October of 18, you're not going to like what you see. What happens is the market can become very overwhelmed by a few holdings. We saw that happen last year. We saw it happen earlier this year. We saw it happen in 18, and it can be a dangerous part for your portfolio when things don't work out. In my opinion, it was what created the demise of the tech wreck in 2000, that the technology sector, recovered from, but most of those companies simply did not recover from. And it was misappropriated capital because people didn't understand what it was they owned. You would like to think 21 years later that we are a smarter investor class. I think what we are is more patient. I think we're more disciplined. I don't think we're necessarily smarter. When, I'll have conversations with people that have large 401ks. I mean, more than $1 million. And I will ask some of the questions in the holdings, and the answers just really, really aren't there. So too many chefs in the kitchen. You really want to have somebody who's coordinate this. Just think about having 10 choir directors, right? It just does not work out well. You get 10 chefs trying to do different recipes or trying to do the same recipe 10 different ways. Put it however you need to put it in your head, but it's a dangerous place to be.
It is. And what can happen is if you have multiple advisors that are trying to advise your funds just based on the assets that they know about, when you're sitting here and you're getting up to retirement, what we know is that the way that your assets need to be allocated, it's not age-based. It's not, hey, I'm getting to the age of 65, I'm looking at retirement, so now I need to switch all of my funds to conservative. That's not how it should be. It's really needs-based. What assets do you need when you retire, and what assets can you afford to take more risk on because you don't really need those assets in the near future? If you're looking at it from that standpoint, you can't allocate all those assets in a proper way if you only have a small picture of what those assets are. So if you have 3 or 4 different advisors working on your assets, there's really no way to ensure that you are being properly allocated or taking the proper amount of risk or not being too conservative. It just doesn't make sense in the long run with what you want your money to do. You can't really collaborate and do the right thing.
So there's a family we take care of that's got a $10 million account, and they've got a family friend that's got another $7 million, right? That's at another place. And the only way I would agree to take the $10 million was if we got copies of the statements from the $7 million. And so I think you all know about our planning team. Jamie's part of that, but we also have an allocation team. That's our chief investment officer, Adam Harder, is our CFA. Andrew Thrasher is our chartered market technician. Thrasher Analytics, it's been with us now. It's just amazing, the 10-year period mark that's happening. And then myself. And there have been at least 2 different times that I know of where, looking at those statements, we've changed holdings that we would have had in a high 7-figure portfolio, because the overlap would have been detrimental to them. It would have made us look like better money managers, but the risk that we would have put that family in order to do it is not something that's acceptable. And bottom line is, we're fiduciaries. Our job is to treat your money as if it were our money and we were in a similar situation. And we have very rigid rules in terms of diversification, the percentage that you can have in something. One of the funny parts about being a professional money manager is we're losers every day. And it's hard for people to get that. But, any day I don't do something, the stock either went up, went down, or stayed the same, right? If it stayed the same, I should have had the money somewhere else. If it went up, right, and I sold it, now I look like an idiot. And if it went down and I didn't sell it all, now I really look like an idiot, right? And the reality is we're long. That means we own Apple at the time of this recording. And we've sold it and bought it at least 5 different times, because when it becomes more than 5% of your position, we need to trim it. That didn't mean all of it, right? But we need to trim it. When we do gifting, a lot of times we will gift Apple stock and we'll buy more of it to increase the basis in people's accounts. But you can't have too many. You can't have too much wisdom, but you can have too many chefs, right? There's a lot of different ways to get it done.
Yep.
But you need to have a coordinated battle plan as opposed to an arbitrary, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we'll see how it all works out at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you're ready to have a fiduciary type conversation, give us a call, 800-928-4001. Ask for Jamie or somebody on the team that Brittany will take the phone call and work with you to get it all set up. But whether it's Grant or Dean or Chris or Darren or Aaron, our director of financial planning, we're happy to have that conversation. 800-928-4001. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com. We look forward to hearing from you. While you're there, get signed up for the Market Carver. That's our weekly economic report that we put out by video. Comes to you every Thursday morning. It's a freebie as well. yourlifeafterwork.com.